The echo of Marina's whispered words sent a chill down my spine. I stood frozen, clutching the laundry basket, as her hushed conversation wafted through the open door of the guest house. Something about the tone and urgency of her voice raised every red flag within me. "I know, but I need more time," she pleaded. Her voice strained. "Just a few more weeks, and I swear I'll have the money." My heart raced as I realized she was talking to a man who was not my son, Adrian. A familiar knot of unease twisted in my gut. Marina's erratic behavior and constant need for cash had become a source of concern, but this conversation hinted at something more sinister. Footsteps approached, and I quickly retreated, my mind whirling with unanswered questions. As Marina emerged, her expression was one of barely contained panic. She jumped when she noticed me, her eyes wide with what looked like guilt. "Delilah, I didn't see you there," she stammered, her hand clutching her phone tightly. "Everything okay, dear?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Yes, of course," she replied with a forced smile. "Just a call about work." Work? Marina hadn't held a job in years, not since Lila was born. The lie was transparent, and it only deepened my suspicions. Over dinner that evening, Adrian and Hank remained oblivious to the tension simmering between Marina and me. Lila, our sweet 7-year-old granddaughter, chattered away, blissfully unaware of the undercurrents rippling beneath the surface. As the meal progressed, I couldn't help but study Marina's behavior. The way she fidgeted, her eyes darting around the room, the forced smiles that never quite reached her eyes. It was as if she carried a heavy burden, one she was desperate to conceal. Later that night, after everyone had retired to their rooms, I found myself pacing the living room, unable to shake the nagging feeling that something was terribly wrong. Marina's cryptic conversation replayed in my mind, each word amplifying the disquiet that had taken root. Hank emerged from our bedroom, his brow furrowed with concern. "What's going on, Delilah? You've been on edge all evening." I hesitated, unsure of how to voice my suspicions without sounding paranoid. But Hank's patient gaze encouraged me to open up. "It's Marina," I confessed, wringing my hands. "I overheard her on the phone earlier, and it sounded like she's in some kind of trouble, financial trouble, perhaps. She was pleading with someone for more time, promising to pay them back." Hank's expression grew grave as he absorbed my words. "Are you certain?" I nodded, recounting the details of the conversation I'd overheard. As the words tumbled out, I could see the weight of my concerns settling upon Hank's shoulders. "We need to tread carefully," he said, his voice heavy with caution. "Accusations without proof could do irreparable damage to this family." His words struck a chord, and I knew he was right. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Marina was hiding something that threatened the very fabric of our family's well-being. As I lay awake that night, my mind raced with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. One thing was certain: I would get to the bottom of this, no matter what it took. The truth had to be uncovered, even if it meant shattering the fragile peace we had so carefully cultivated. In the days that followed, a palpable tension lingered in our home. I found myself constantly on edge, scrutinizing Marina's every move, searching for any clues that might shed light on her mysterious behavior. The truth was, I distrusted her, a realization that filled me with guilt, but one I couldn't ignore. It started with small things: a missing piece of jewelry, a few dollars gone from my purse. Insignificant incidents, perhaps, but they felt like threads in a larger tapestry of deceit. Marina's excuses rang hollow, her explanations riddled with holes that only deepened my suspicions. "I must have misplaced it," she'd say, waving away my concerns with a casual shrug. But the glint in her eyes betrayed her nonchalance, hinting at something more sinister lurking beneath the surface. Then came the larger transgressions, the ones that couldn't be easily dismissed. Unexplained withdrawals from our joint bank account, purchases of expensive clothing and accessories that seemed far beyond her means. Marina's once frugal ways had given way to a newfound taste for luxury, and I couldn't help but wonder where the money was coming from. "It's just a little treat for myself," she'd insist, flashing a dazzling smile that did little to mask the calculating gleam in her eyes. Hank tried to reason with me, urging caution and patience. "We can't make accusations without proof," he'd remind me, his voice laced with concern. But I couldn't shake the gnawing sense that something was terribly wrong, and Marina was at the center of it all. It was during one of our hushed conversations that a plan began to take shape. A way to catch Marina in the act, to unravel the web of deception she'd so carefully woven. With Hank's reluctant approval, I began marking the bills in our cash box, a silent trap waiting to be sprung. The days ticked by, each one more tense than the last. Marina's behavior grew increasingly erratic, her absences more frequent and her excuses more flimsy. It was as if she knew the walls were closing in, and she was scrambling to maintain her facade of normalcy. Then, one fateful afternoon, I caught her red-handed. I'd returned home unexpectedly, only to find Marina rifling through my dresser drawers. Her eyes went wide with panic when she saw me, and she instinctively tried to hide the bundle of marked bills clutched in her trembling hand. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Marina's expression hardened, her eyes narrowing into slits of defiance. "You have no right to accuse me," she spat, her words laced with venom. "You're just a paranoid old woman, grasping at shadows." Her words stung, but I refused to back down. "Those are my bills, Marina, the ones I marked specifically to catch you in the act." For a moment, she faltered, her mask of indignation slipping. But then, just as quickly, it snapped back into place, and she unleashed a torrent of denials and accusations, painting me as the villain in her twisted narrative. Hank rushed in, alerted by the commotion, and tried to play peacemaker. But Marina would have none of it, storming out and leaving a trail of chaos in her wake. As I watched her retreating figure, a sense of grim determination settled over me. The game was up, the truth laid bare. Marina's betrayal had been exposed, and now the real battle was just beginning. The air was thick with tension as we all gathered in the living room. Marina sat rigidly on the couch, her arms crossed defensively, while Adrian paced back and forth, his expression etched with a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "This is absurd," Marina spat, her eyes flashing with defiance. "How dare you accuse me of stealing?" I steeled myself, clutching the bundle of marked bills like a lifeline. "These are the same bills I marked, Marina. I found them in your possession, hidden in my dresser drawer." Adrian's head whipped around, his gaze shifting between us like a pendulum. "What's going on?" "Someone needs to explain this to me right now." Hank placed a steadying hand on my shoulder, his silent support bolstering my resolve. "We caught Marina stealing from us, son. She's been taking money, jewelry, anything she could get her hands on." Marina recoiled as if she'd been slapped, her expression contorting into one of outrage. "How dare you? You're both delusional, grasping at straws to suit your twisted little narrative." "We have proof, Marina," I said, my voice firm. "These marked bills are all the evidence we need." "That proves nothing," she snapped, her eyes blazing with fury. "You're just looking for an excuse to turn Adrian against me." Adrian flinched, his face pale with shock. "Marina, please, tell me this isn't true." For a moment Marina faltered, her mask of defiance slipping ever so slightly. But then, just as quickly, she rallied, turning her venomous gaze on her husband. "Of course it's not true, darling," she cooed, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. "Your mother has become unhinged in her old age. She's seeing things that aren't there, twisting innocent actions into some grand conspiracy." My heart sank as Adrian's eyes clouded with doubt. Marina had played her trump card, exploiting the unbreakable bond between mother and son. "Mom, I don't know what to believe," Adrian stammered, his eyes pleading with me to retract my accusations. Before I could respond, Marina pounced, her words slicing through the air like daggers. "Your mother has always resented me, Adrian. She's never accepted me into this family, and now she's trying to drive a wedge between us." Tears of frustration stung my eyes as I watched Marina's manipulation take hold. She was a master of deception, weaving her lies with surgical precision, playing on Adrian's love and loyalty like a virtuoso. "That's not true," I protested, my voice cracking with emotion. "I'm only trying to protect this family from her deceit." Adrian shook his head, his expression clouded with a mixture of hurt and confusion. I don't know what to believe anymore." Marina seized the opportunity, wrapping her arms around him in a gesture of false comfort. "It's okay, my love. We'll get through this, just like we always do." As I watched them embrace, the bitter taste of defeat filled my mouth. Marina had won this round, her lies and manipulations carrying the day. But deep within me, an ember of determination still burned, fueled by the knowledge that the truth was on my side. This was far from over. In the aftermath of Marina's blatant lies and Adrian's misguided loyalty, a palpable rift had formed within our family. The once warm and inviting atmosphere had given way to a chilling tension, each of us trapped in our own emotional turmoil. Marina strutted around the house with a smug air of victory, her every action a silent taunt, a reminder of the wedge she'd driven between us. Her deceit had taken root, casting doubt and suspicion like a noxious cloud that threatened to consume us all. Hank, bless his heart, tried his best to remain the voice of reason. "We need concrete evidence," he'd say, his eyes filled with a mixture of concern and determination, something that can't be twisted or denied. His words struck a chord within me, reigniting the flames of my resolve. If Marina wanted a war, then a war she would have. I would not rest until the truth was laid bare, no matter the cost. With Hank's reluctant approval, I took the first step in my quest for vindication, installing hidden cameras throughout the house. It felt like a violation of trust, but Marina's betrayal had left me with little choice. Day after day, I pored over the footage, documenting every suspicious movement, every whispered conversation, every unexplained absence. Each new piece of evidence was like a puzzle piece, slowly revealing the bigger picture of Marina's deceit. I became a prisoner in my own home, haunted by the ghosts of Marina's lies. Sleep evaded me, my nights consumed by the flickering images on the monitor, searching for that one damning moment that would unravel her carefully constructed web of deception. Marina, oblivious to my covert surveillance, grew bolder in her actions. Her spending spiraled out of control, designer handbags and expensive jewelry adorning her like trophies of her conquest. And all the while she played the part of the doting wife and mother, her lies growing more elaborate with each passing day. It was during one of these sleepless nights that I found an unlikely ally in my quest for the truth. An old friend from my nursing days, a former police officer named Cynthia, had reached out after sensing my distress. Over cups of strong coffee and whispered confidences, I poured out the sordid details of Marina's betrayal, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and despair. Cynthia listened intently, her eyes filled with a combination of sympathy and steely determination. "You need to document everything," she urged, her voice firm but laced with compassion. "Every lie, every unexplained expense, every suspicious action. Build an airtight case that even Adrian can't ignore." Her words ignited a newfound sense of purpose within me. I would become a one-woman investigation team, leaving no stone unturned in my quest to expose Marina's duplicity. With Cynthia's guidance, I began meticulous documentation, cross-referencing bank statements, receipts, and eyewitness accounts. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the fortress I was building, a bastion of truth that would withstand even Marina's most vicious assaults. As the days turned into weeks, the strain of my double life began to take its toll. Marina's barbed comments and dismissive glances cut deeper with each passing day, reminding me of the precarious position I found myself in. But through it all, Cynthia remained my unwavering rock, a beacon of support in the storm of Marina's lies. Her friendship became a lifeline, sustaining me through the darkest moments when doubt threatened to consume me. Little did Marina know, the walls were closing in. The truth was a relentless hunter, and I was its unyielding pursuer. Her reign of deception was nearing its end, and soon she would face the consequences of her actions. The stage was set for the ultimate confrontation, a reckoning that would shake the very foundations of our family, and this time there would be no escape from the harsh light of truth. As the days ticked by, the strain of my covert investigation began to take its toll. Sleep became a fleeting luxury, replaced by endless hours spent hunched over the monitor, scouring the footage for any shred of evidence that could unravel Marina's web of lies. Cynthia became my lifeline, her steadfast support and unwavering belief in my cause the only thing keeping me afloat. Our meetings grew more frequent, our conversations a safe haven where I could voice my fears and frustrations without judgment. "She's unraveling, Cynthia," I confided one evening, my voice laced with exhaustion. "The more evidence I gather, the more reckless she becomes." Cynthia nodded grimly, her eyes reflecting a grim understanding. Cornered animals are often the most dangerous. Marina knows the walls are closing in, and she's lashing out in desperation. Her words rang true. Marina's behavior had become increasingly erratic, her lies more brazen, and her actions more reckless. It was as if she believed she had already won, that her manipulation of Adrian had granted her immunity from consequence. "She's spending like there's no tomorrow," I lamented, rifling through a stack of bank statements. "Expensive jewelry, designer clothes, lavish outings. It's like she's flaunting her ill-gotten gains right in front of us." Cynthia's brow furrowed as she studied the documentation I had meticulously compiled. "She's overconfident, sloppy. That's good for us. It means she's making mistakes." I nodded, my jaw clenched with determination, "and I'll be there to catch every single one of them." With each passing day, the rift within our family grew wider, the tension so thick it was suffocating. Adrian remained steadfastly loyal to Marina, dismissing my concerns as unfounded paranoia fueled by resentment. "Mom, you need to let this go," he pleaded, his eyes filled with a mixture of exasperation and concern. "Marina loves us, and your constant accusations are tearing this family apart." His words cut deep, but I refused to back down. "I'm only trying to protect us, Adrian. Can't you see what she's doing?" Marina would swoop in during these moments, playing the role of the devoted wife to perfection. "Your mother is blinded by her irrational hatred for me," she cooed, her eyes brimming with false tears. "She's become consumed by this vendetta, and it's poisoning her mind." Adrian would pull her close, casting reproachful glances in my direction as he comforted his wife, the woman I knew to be a master manipulator. These scenes played out with increasing frequency, each one chipping away at my resolve. But Cynthia's unwavering support kept me grounded, her friendship a lifeline in the storm of Marina's deceit. "Don't let her get to you," Cynthia urged, her voice firm but laced with compassion. "She's playing mind games, trying to break your spirit. But you're stronger than that, Delilah. You have the truth on your side." Her words reignited the flame of determination within me. I would not be deterred, not by Marina's lies or her emotional manipulation. The truth was my shield, and I would wield it like a sword, cutting through the tangled web of deception that had ensnared my family. As the evidence mounted, so too did the weight of the burden I carried. Sleep became elusive, replaced by fitful slumbers haunted by Marina's betrayal. But I refused to falter, driven by a singular purpose, to expose the truth and restore the sanctity of our family. Little did Marina know, her reign of deception was nearing its end. The final confrontation loomed on the horizon, a reckoning that would shake the foundations of our lives, and this time there would be no escape from the harsh light of truth. The air was thick with tension as we gathered around the dining table for our weekly family dinner. Marina, ever the master of deception, wore a mask of serene domesticity, busying herself with serving platters and making small talk as if nothing were amiss. Adrian, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface, chatted amiably about his work, his eyes filled with a love and devotion that made my heart ache. How could he not see the monster he had welcomed into our home, into our lives? Hank shot me a sidelong glance, his expression a silent plea for restraint. But the time for patience had passed. The evidence I had painstakingly gathered was irrefutable, and I could no longer stand idly by as Marina's lies poisoned our family. As Marina placed the final dish on the table, I cleared my throat, the sound cutting through the forced conviviality like a knife. "Before we begin, there's something we need to address." Marina's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing as she sensed the shift in the atmosphere. "What is it, Delilah?" I leveled my gaze at her, steeling myself for the battle to come. "I know what you've been doing, Marina. The stealing, the lies, the secret meetings. I have proof of all of it." A hush fell over the table as Adrian and Hank exchanged bewildered glances. Marina, for her part, maintained her facade of innocence, a sickly sweet smile curling her lips. "I don't know what you're talking about," she demurred, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "These accusations are baseless and hurtful." "Enough with the lies," I snapped, my patience finally fraying. "I have footage of you rifling through our belongings, taking money and valuables. I have documentation of your secret rendezvous and unexplained expenditures." Marina's mask slipped, her expression contorting into one of barely contained fury. "You've been spying on me?" In my own home? Our home, corrected, my voice firm. The home you've been systematically robbing and betraying with your deceit. Adrian's eyes widened, his gaze flickering between us as the reality of the situation began to sink in. Marina, is this true? Marina turned towards him, her eyes brimming with crocodile tears. Of course not, my love. Your mother has become unhinged, consumed by her irrational hatred for me. Don't listen to her lies, Adrian, I pleaded, my voice thick with emotion. I have proof, irrefutable evidence of her betrayal. With trembling hands I produced the damning footage, the grainy images flickering to life on the small screen. Marina's face drained of color as she watched herself slinking through the house, pocketing valuables and sneaking out at odd hours. Adrian recoiled as if he'd been struck, his eyes boring into the incriminating evidence with a mixture of horror and disbelief. Marina, how could you? Marina's composure cracked, her mask of innocence shattering like fragile glass. You stupid, meddling old woman, she spat, her words laced with venom. You've ruined everything. In that moment, the veneer of civility fell away, revealing the true depths of Marina's depravity. She launched into a tirade of accusations and denials, her voice rising to a fever pitch as she lashed out like a cornered animal. Adrian simply sat there, stunned into silence, his world crumbling around him. Hank tried to intervene, his voice a calming balm in the midst of the storm. Marina, please, let's all take a deep breath and— No, she snarled, her eyes wild with fury. I'm done playing by your rules, done with all of your lies and manipulations. With a violent sweep of her arm, she sent the dishes crashing to the floor, shattering porcelain and scattering food in a chaotic mess. Lila, our sweet granddaughter, let out a terrified wail, her eyes wide with fear. In that moment, something shifted within Marina. Her expression hardened, her lips curling into a sneer of pure contempt. You want the truth, Delilah? Fine. The truth is, I've been bleeding this family dry for months, and none of you were smart enough to catch on. The words hung in the air like a noxious cloud, their impact rendering us all speechless. Marina had finally shown her true colors, and the sight was as horrifying as it was vindicating. As she stormed out, leaving a trail of destruction in her wake, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. The battle had been hard fought, but in the end, the truth had prevailed. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but for the first time in months, I had hoped that our family could heal, that we could rebuild from the ashes of Marina's betrayal and emerge stronger, united by the bonds of love and loyalty. The war was won, but the scars would linger. And as I held Lila close, shielding her from the fallout, I silently vowed that no matter what lay ahead, I would protect my family with every fiber of my being. The truth had set us free, but at what cost? The silence that followed Marina's explosive outburst was deafening, a palpable weight that seemed to press down upon us all. Adrian sat motionless, his face ashen, his eyes fixed on the space where his wife had stood moments earlier, hurling her venomous words like daggers. Hank was the first to break the spell, his voice low and measured. Son, I'm so sorry. We tried to warn you, but— Adrian held up a trembling hand, silencing his father. Don't. Just don't. I watched helplessly as my son's world crumbled around him, the foundations of his life stripped bare by the harsh light of truth. Marina's betrayal had cut him to the core, and I ached to offer him comfort, to soothe the wounds inflicted by the woman he had loved and trusted. But before I could speak, the door creaked open, and Marina slunk back into the room, her eyes red-rimmed and her shoulders slumped in defeat. The fight had gone out of her, replaced by a weary resignation that hung like a shroud around her slight frame. Adrian, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. I owe you an explanation. Adrian stiffened, his jaw clenched, but he remained silent, granting her the opportunity to speak. Marina took a shuddering breath, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. It started innocently enough, a few dollars here and there, just to feed my habit. My brow furrowed as the pieces began to fall into place. Habit? What are you talking about? Marina's gaze flickered to me, her eyes haunted. Gambling. I have a problem, one that spiraled out of control. A collective gasp rippled through the room as the truth finally came to light. Marina, the woman we had welcomed into our family, the mother of our precious granddaughter, was a gambling addict, and she had been systematically bleeding us dry to fuel her addiction. How could you? Adrian's voice was a hoarse whisper, laced with heartbreak and disbelief. "How could you betray us like this?" Marina flinched as if struck, her eyes brimming with remorseful tears. "It started small, just a few dollars here and there to scratch the itch. But then the losses mounted, and I found myself digging a deeper and deeper hole, desperate to chase that high, to win it all back." Her words hung in the air, their weight suffocating. I thought back to all the signs, the unexplained expenditures, the missing valuables, all the breadcrumbs leading to this sordid truth. "And Lila?" Hank's voice was tight, his expression inscrutable. "Did you involve our granddaughter in your schemes?" Marina's head bowed in shame, her shoulders trembling with silent sobs. I did. I manipulated her, promised her lavish gifts if she helped me take a few things here and there." A collective gasp of horror echoed through the room, and I felt my heart constrict with a pain so acute it stole my breath away. Marina had not only betrayed our trust, but had also corrupted the innocence of our sweet Lila, using her as a pawn in her twisted game. Adrian shot to his feet, his face contorted with rage. "Get out!" he growled, his voice thick with barely contained fury. "Get out of my house and never come back." Marina opened her mouth as if to protest, but one look at Adrian's thunderous expression seemed to quell any further objections. With a defeated nod, she rose to her feet and made her way towards the door, each step heavy with the weight of her sins. As she reached the threshold, she turned back, her eyes pleading. "Adrian, please, let me see Lila. I'll get help, I promise. Just don't take her away from me." But Adrian's resolve was unshakable, his love for his wife eclipsed by the depths of her betrayal. "You lost that right the moment you involved our daughter in your schemes. I'll be filing for full custody first thing in the morning." Marina's face crumpled, but she offered no further resistance. With a broken sob, she turned and disappeared into the night, leaving a trail of shattered lives in her wake. As the door closed behind her, a heavy silence descended upon the room, punctuated only by the muffled sound of Lila's whimpers from the next room. In that moment, the weight of Marina's deceit crashed down upon us all, a tsunami of grief and anger that threatened to consume us whole. But even as the tides of emotion surged, I felt a glimmer of hope flicker to life within me. The truth, no matter how painful, had been laid bare, and from these ashes we would rebuild, one step at a time, one day at a time, until the wounds had healed and the scars had faded. It would be a long and arduous journey, but we would walk it together, as a family united by our love and our resilience. Marina's betrayal would not define us, it would be the catalyst for our rebirth, a crucible from which we would emerge stronger, wiser, and more tightly bound than ever before. As I reached out to gather Adrian and Lila into my embrace, I silently vowed that no matter what lay ahead, we would face it together, fortified by the unbreakable bonds of family and the healing power of truth. The days that followed Marina's explosive confession were a blur of legal proceedings and emotional turmoil. Adrian, steadfast in his resolve, wasted no time in filing for divorce and seeking full custody of Lila. "She doesn't get to slither back into our lives after what she's done," he declared, his voice laced with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. "Not until she's paid her debt to society and proven herself worthy of being a part of Lila's life again." As much as it pained me to see my son suffering, I couldn't help but swell with pride at the unwavering strength he displayed in the face of such devastating betrayal. Marina's deceit had cut him to the core, but instead of crumbling, he had risen like a phoenix from the ashes, driven by an unshakable determination to protect his daughter. The legal process was arduous, fraught with contentious hearings and bitter confrontations. Marina, perhaps sensing the gravity of her transgressions, offered little resistance, her once defiant spirit broken by the weight of her lies. In the end, justice prevailed. Marina was ordered to not only repay the staggering sum of money she had stolen from our family, but also to undergo a court-mandated rehabilitation program to address her gambling addiction. As for Lila, the judge granted Adrian full custody, with Marina receiving strictly supervised visitation rights, a harsh but necessary measure to ensure our granddaughter's well-being in the aftermath of her mother's deplorable actions. "She'll have the chance to rebuild her relationship with Lila," Adrian told me, his eyes shining with a mixture of resolution and cautious hope. "But only if she proves herself worthy of that privilege." Marina's sentencing was a bittersweet moment, a culmination of months of anguish and turmoil. As she stood before the judge, her shoulders slumped in defeat, I couldn't help but feel a pang of pity amid the overwhelming sense of vindication. This woman, who had once been welcomed into our family with open arms, had fallen so far, consumed by the demons of her own making. Her descent into depravity had not only cost her our trust, but had also robbed her of the love and respect of her own daughter. As the gavel fell, sealing her fate, I saw a flicker of remorse in Marina's eyes. A fleeting glimpse of the person she might have been, untainted by the insidious grip of addiction. In that moment, I realized that true revenge lay not in her suffering but in our perseverance, our unwavering commitment to healing the wounds she had inflicted upon our family. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but we were ready to face it head-on, bolstered by the unbreakable bonds that had been forged in the crucible of Marina's betrayal. Hank and I became a constant presence in Adrian and Lila's lives, offering unwavering support and stability in the wake of their upheaval. Slowly but surely, we began to piece together the fragments of our fractured family, building anew on the foundations of love, trust, and resilience. Lila, bless her heart, proved to be our greatest source of strength and hope. Her innocent spirit, untainted by the darkness of her mother's actions, was a beacon that guided us through the darkest of times. "Why did Mommy do those bad things?" she would ask, her eyes wide and imploring. And in those moments, we would gather her close, assuring her that while her mother had made grave mistakes, she still loved her. A love that would have to be earned anew through painstaking effort and unwavering commitment. As the months passed, the wounds began to heal, though the scars would forever serve as a reminder of the price we had paid for the truth. Marina, to her credit, seemed to embrace her court-mandated rehabilitation, her visits with Lila becoming less strained and more genuine with each passing week. It was during one such visit, as I watched Marina and Layla engage in a tentative yet tender exchange, that I felt a sense of closure wash over me. The anger and resentment that had once consumed me had given way to a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the resilience of my family, for the strength we had found in adversity, and for the unbreakable bonds that had carried us through the storm. As Marina bid farewell to Lila, her eyes shone with a newfound clarity, a glimmer of the woman she had once been, untainted by the darkness that had nearly consumed her. In that moment, I realized that true victory lay not in her suffering, but in our ability to rise above it, to emerge from the ashes of her betrayal stronger, wiser, and more tightly bound than ever before. The road ahead would undoubtedly be paved with challenges, but we were ready to face them head-on, fortified by the unwavering love and support that had seen us through our darkest hours. As I watched Adrian and Lila laugh and play in the warm embrace of our family, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The truth had set us free, but it had also revealed the depths of our resilience and the unbreakable bonds that truly defined us. We were survivors, warriors forged in the fires of adversity, and nothing, not even the cruelest of betrayals, could ever dim the light that burned within our hearts.